The question now becomes, how can we sustain these gains, especially given the political environment with a dim view of cities and their governments coming from the very top and a loss of the very federal funding that may have contributed to these gains, at least for the next 3 years? How can we avoid another upswing in violence?
What I've seen, or seen across the country, what we've seen is a real professionalization of the work of violence reduction, right? And recognizing that focusing on this issue is, yes, in the domain of police and the criminal justice system, but also needs a broader array of stakeholders and folks focused on this. And so, what we've seen with the amount of offices of violence prevention or reduction that are popping up in cities, as well as the professionalization of the frontline CVI workforce, I think is worth attention, right?
The biggest thing to me that I'm worried about, but I'm also hopeful about is keeping focus on this issue is probably the biggest thing. And I'm worried that because we're not in a crisis anymore, that the focus may drift from this. And I think the way that you keep sustaining these decreases is keeping focusing on it. You don't give up on the work, whether the work is CVI, whether the work is trying to improve policing, whether the work is, funding red flag laws, extreme risk protection orders. You can't let off the gas basically now that we're just not in a crisis anymore.
There's a real need for more federal funding, but we have a Trump administration doesn't care about making our communities safer. And so the states are going to have to continue to step up. We're going to have to continue to pressure governors and state legislators to continue to fund what works. ATF is no longer holding gun dealers accountable. So now we need states to step up and do their own inspections and give them the tools to be able to stop the flow of guns. And in CAP's federal framework, we very specifically call for federal funding for a host of policies, and we're going to continue to push for that. But we know in this governing moment, that's not possible.
Because even though we've seen these reductions, like I said, Oakland, for example, I mean, that's still more than 50 people who were murdered, who lost their children. I mean, so we haven't won this at all. We want to get to zero. We want to get to the point where even the quote unquote outlier cities are seeing the same levels of safety, if not more, than suburban communities, more affluent communities. So that's the end game. But again, it's just being able to keep the pressure on at every level, at the community level, all the way up to the folks who do work at the state and federal level.